Today, I want to talk about a documentary that I watched on Netflix, and it made me think of how the mind watching events like that can have a huge impact. Welcome to Real Life and Archetypes. My name is Marina, and this is a place of rest from the algorithm, so welcome home. Today, I want to talk about this documentary I watched on Netflix, Murder by the Coast. So this is an event that happened not far away from where I am, and it happened many years ago in the late 90s. And I watched it a while ago, but I was watching again a few of those documentaries because I'm in Spain. I'm getting, Netflix is offering titles that belong to cases from here. And I remembered those cases. So this one in particular, I wanted to talk about and also refer to a bunch of others, but it's pretty much the same kind of subject. They're not actually focusing on the case and the details of the case in terms of facts, but rather the influence of the media and how we react as an audience and the people involved locally. And so to me, that really relates to the mind and how we use it and how it can really create a lot of damage. I apologize for my voice, but it's allergy season and I can't seem to recover it. So anyway, I wanted to just begin for a second with this quote from 1984, which is very relevant. Reality exists in the human mind and nowhere else. This is from his novel. This is a very, very famous book that is very relevant to understanding how the mind works. It's important to understand the nature of the mind and how it works. Let me find this for you. This is it. So the nature of the mind, it's by nature unstable and fast. This is relevant because the fact that the mind as an archetype, you have to understand that it needs to be fulfilled. If you're not in charge of your archetypes, doesn't matter. They will operate on their own. And that's a problem. The mind particularly, because it impacts everything in your life, absolutely everything. So if you're not in charge of your mind, someone else will be in charge of it. Okay, so pay attention. The mind by nature, unstable and fast. That's the raw nature of the mind. It wants to know what is happening in your reality and affects how you perceive it. Your mind creates your reality. What you're doing up there in your mind, it wants certainty. It really wants to know with some degree of certainty. And it seeks new stimulation again and again. And it's immediate communication. This is important to understand. What you find out, you want to communicate. This is the mind in its raw form. So, it's going to be different for every person, of course, and you can pay attention to that. You will notice that some people are very quiet. They keep to themselves. They don't engage in this kind of stuff. Why? Because their mind archetype is just very different and it doesn't have a lot of it. Some of us were born with a lot of this energy and we just can't help it. Our mind goes everywhere. It wants to know a lot of things. So for people like me, probably like you, if you're on social media, we have this urge to communicate, to connect, to know things. Our curiosity is very, very big. So it depends on the person. Some people, and you can see that in a person's chart, some people have a lot and you know immediately, just like people who have a lot of the hero archetype, you notice immediately. So the mind seeks new stimulation and immediate communication. So it's like an exchange immediate. If you don't have a process of thinking, right, you will just say things without thinking too much. It affects how you connect with and integrate into your environment because you will connect with people because of the way that your mind works, and also because even if you think that you're isolated or you're not very social. We are connected. We are connected to our environment. We are connected to what is happening. We are connected to the news. That's another way that the mind seeks stimulation. I mean, it's no wonder that television is so successful, that social media is so successful. The mind wants to know, and it wants to be stimulated and connected. The mind needs to be linked to your life purpose or direction, which is set by the hero. I say it again and again. The first archetype of the hero is massively important. If you have a sense of purpose, you find something to love. Let me just find our hero here. Where are you, my dear hero? Okay, all right. So there it is. The hero wants you to find something to love through activity. It wants you to engage in the world. It wants you to be active so that you feel alive and then fulfill your life potential. It's in charge of all of your energy, body, mind, and spirit. It indicates the direction of your path to fulfillment. This is the important one. It gives you a direction and a path. Okay, so let me just go back to the mind. It needs to be linked to that path, to that direction. The mind is so unstable. We need to have some degree of control over it. Okay, that's important. And that is set by the hero. So the mind is very difficult to control, but if you don't have a sense of purpose in life, that is going to take the energy of the mind so that it's going to help the hero fulfill your life. Your mind is just on its own. Going back to this amazing documentary, well, amazing. Here is the case itself. So let me just tell the story very briefly. This was in the late 90s in a very small village. A young girl, 17 years old, I believe, disappears. And they find her weeks later. She was killed. They find a few things where she is. But anyway, what happens is that as soon as the girl disappears and then they find her, you can imagine the commotion in a very small town, and also how everybody is becoming very paranoid. And again, your mind is trying to perceive reality, and it's creating a reality for you right there. This is so important. People just start talking. They start to become very suspicious. They're trying to speculate. And of course, the longer it takes, first of all, to find the girl, and then when they find the girl, everybody's waiting for law enforcement to find a culprit. I mean, no need to tell you that back in the late 90s, and this still happens nowadays a lot, but imagine in the late 90s in a very small town in the south of Spain, the rigor in terms of investigation was not there. So anyway, the issue is that the mother of the young girl had been in a relationship with another woman. And this is important because from our perspective in our modern times, it's not that important, a relationship between two women. But in the late 90s, in Spain, in the south of Spain, in a small town, it is. Why? Because all of a sudden, law enforcement starts to target this woman, and I'm not very sure of what details, because apparently, from what I understood in the documentary, and I remember back then, it was talked about, but I didn't have a TV at university, and then back at my parents' home, I mean, we didn't really watch TV in the summer. So anyway, this woman had been in a relationship with the mother of the child for many years, but they had broken up. And of course, as soon as you hear the word lesbian and a relationship, imagine the whole media. It became national news now. And you had all of the morning shows and the evening shows with pundits and so-called experts at a table, everybody speculating. I mean, the stuff that you hear in this documentary it will shock you, because people come to conclusion, and even, experts who represent a figure of authority, and people will listen to them, and you hear people say, yes, of course she's guilty, because here is my psychological profile, because she's a lesbian and therefore super aggressive, and therefore she killed the girl. You will hear that. It's really quite something. But this is important. The mind. Let me just remove this. Know your mind. What you're stimulating in your mind creates your perception of reality. It's very important to understand the following. You can stimulate the mind in the way that you want. It's not inherently bad, but having an awareness of what it is that you're stimulating. Is it facts? Is it a rumor? Is it a hunch? So if you define the nature of what is, going round and round in your head and that you're communicating, that's going to be helpful. That's going to bring some stability, because you can recognize, you can be at your kitchen table and gossiping, and that's okay, but you need to know what it is that you're talking about, and you need to make a distinction between, the things that you feel, the things that you've heard are real facts, and whether you're actually remembering them correctly if you're stimulating rumors. So it's important for that. Why? Because in this case, and this I'm going for true crime, because this is very important. I've watched a bunch of documentaries on Netflix, and they were all of the same kind of subject. It was really about the media circus and how everybody starts to just be swayed by opinions on TV or gossips that have zero foundation. So what happens? This woman is actually arrested, even though they found trace DNA that doesn't belong to her. There's nothing to incriminate her except gossip. And even the mother of the victim, and she's a family, so she's a victim as well, and I can understand that. Of course she's very upset. So it's not a way, I don't want to be blaming her, but just to see how the impact that her words had by talking on TV and talking about her ex-partner as being very vengeful and very this and very that. Of course, she just lost her daughter. She's upset. And the police is now pointing at that woman. What would be your reaction? Your mind cannot help but to go there. And here's an important thing. The mind can succumb to lower instincts, and words can cut like a knife. They can deceive, they can lie. This is an important thing about the mind archetype that you can see. If I will show you now that the mind, the mental element, the air element, this is represented as air in a lot of things, like in the Zodiac, in astrology, it's called the air element. Everything related to what is mental, what is about connection. And I showed that in another video, and I just wanted to show you, this is the representation of everything mental in tarot cards. Now, this is a beautiful deck that I want to show, because everything related to air, so our thoughts and our communication, it's a depressing kind of, all of those images are like that for the air. It's no coincidence. Words can be very powerful. Let me just give credit for this illustration to Mila Losenko, which is the author of this tarot deck. It's very beautiful. I love the artwork in tarot decks because they have a lot of symbology. So the sword, the mind is a sword. It can be used as a weapon. Whatever you're thinking can have a lot of consequences. And by the way, we all succumb to those things. It's very, very difficult to control the mind. So they arrest the woman. the lesbian woman. And I need to say that word because it plays such a huge role in her arrest. Now, if I remember correctly, in the documentary, they even mentioned that she did have an alibi. She was babysitting her niece on that day, and I guess they totally discarded her alibi or whatever her sisters said about that she was taking care of her child. I mean, it's incredible. So now, a few months later, she spends about, after 18 months in prison, there is the trial. And this is where I had this scene that triggered me to want to create a video about this. At the entrance of the courthouse, you have this mature woman. There were a lot of people because, of course, everybody wanted to participate. It's very rare in Spain, I think, to have a trial with a jury, and even more rare to have a trial broadcast on television. And so that trial was not broadcast, but it was a jury. And so the whole town, the whole village wanted to be there. And they were queuing up at night just to be able to get a spot in there. So a journalist was interviewing a mature woman and asking her, so you've been waiting here for so many hours all night long? She said, yes, I have nothing to do, and that's why I'm here. So, nothing to do. Excuse me. This goes back to our hero. The hero gives a direction and it keeps you active. It wants you to find something to love through activity. This is the reason why you have a direction and you need to fill that space to make sure that you fulfill that purpose that the hero has set. This woman, of course, she was probably retired, and I'm not trying to, just judge people. I'm just trying to illustrate just how important it is to pay attention to our mind, because it really has enormous consequences. So this woman is there. The whole town is talking. Everybody is vilifying the woman who is now on trial. And, they've got nothing else to do. I guess they can wait all night and queue up so that in order to be in trial. I mean, trials are fascinating. So the trial happens and the woman is convicted. She's sentenced to prison. And I'm just telling you, she's wrongfully convicted. And you know why? Because not long after, another girl shows up. Well, actually, another girl disappears. First of all, she disappears. And after quite a while, I don't remember how many weeks, she is found. And guess what? That poor little soul, another young girl, 17 or so, she defended herself. She tried to defend herself. She fought her assailant, her murderer, and she had trace DNA under her fingernails. And they find a match for this DNA. Guess what? They found it on a cigarette butt that was right next to the body of the first victim that I was talking about earlier. I mean, you have someone who is convicted in jail and apparently with an alibi, discarded. She is in jail because she's a lesbian and she looks masculine or so. She is supposed to spend the rest of her life in jail. And now another girl is dead. It turns out one thing leads to another. They find who that DNA belongs to because, what do you know? The guy is a foreign national. He's a British man, and he has a body count in the UK. And to me, this is an important detail. So in the UK, he was supposed to be tried, I think, because, justice in Europe is just a mess. But anyway, he escaped to Spain and did not attend his own trial. Well, duh, of course. And they didn't capture him. They did nothing. Interpol didn't do anything because, who cares? So he had a body count in the UK. And there was one of the women who was a survivor, and she recognized him in the photographs when she saw that on TV. I mean, it was a mess. To me, this is important. Why? For the following reason. They immediately release the wrongfully convicted woman. I mean, imagine she had spent almost 2 years in prison for something that she didn't do. The entire village had vilified her. Her family was like, what the hell? She was taking care of, her niece. Anyway, they released the woman. Why is it important that the guy has a body count? Well, first of all, it gives you more of a certainty in terms of, well, that's him. You know why? Because at this stage, the guy, first of all, confesses. Many do. And then he retracts. Of course he does. They all do. And then they tell so many stories. Oh, let me see. Do I have what I wanted to talk about here? Oh, I forgot about that. Okay. So what happens now? Suddenly he starts to say, oh, actually, I have a connection with the wrongfully convicted woman. Now, it didn't last. But this is very typical of every time you have, something happening, people talking, there is always this figure of the trickster. And I've seen enough cases and trials and documentaries to be able to say safely that it happens a lot, that they will try to implicate others and do a lot of things. Why? There's a function to this trickster tool, these skills that people use. People who are very much of the street people, street smart people. And he was one of those. He was already somebody with a background, okay? They know to use confusion. And when you say something and then the opposite and then this other thing and this other, I just, right after that, I watched another documentary and then another, and it was always like that. So much confusion. What happens when your mind is confused? Your mind seeks certainty and it drops out when it's confused or bloated. It's like, I don't know what is true anymore. I don't know what to think anymore. In this case, and this is relevant in terms of this woman, the wrongfully convicted woman and her reputation, it didn't last, this lie that this guy wanted to trick people, because he knew the case was very famous and it was all over TV. And these people, their narcissism is just kicking in. It's really upsetting. But it didn't hold. His attempt to trick people didn't hold. Why? To me, it's because he had a body count. In other cases, you don't know. It's like you can have some confusion, but in this case, they had they had witnesses, they had a lot of evidence in terms of the body count in the UK. So now there is a degree of certainty. And this, I assume and I hope that it helped the wrongfully convicted woman, even though her life was hell. But I'm pretty sure that in terms of people, even though people do not want to admit that they were wrong and they were indulging in, hurting other people and just discussing things with no facts. This is the gossiping and the rumor mill. This is something that really hurts a lot of people. So the sword, I spoke of the sword. Yeah, and I wanted to mention something else about the sword. It cuts like a knife, right? Words cut like a knife, and rumors and gossiping. This is a quote that, by the way, I do not know where I found it, and I tried to put it on Google. Just as a side note, this is the mind, how it's easily distracted and goes from one thing to another. This is a quote that I love, but I can't find it anywhere. I don't know where I saw it. I seem to remember that I saw it. Obviously, I copied it from somewhere. It was in my database of quotes, and usually, because it has no author, but I didn't even take note of who put that quote, but it's not mine, okay? So this is a Latin quote. I do not know where it comes from. The voice of false men, the force of hatred. You have to realize just how incredibly powerful words can be, and the way that we think and the way that we speak about things. And by the way, it's not only potentially destructive to others, but it can be very harmful to ourselves, because what we have right there, it really has a huge impact. So anyway, the woman, I think, after many years, and because the guy was really the guy, and it's just, imagine that case. I'm hoping that she can live, but she probably took a few years, and she was commenting in the documentary how, she would go to a store to buy some shoes, and everybody would gather around and film her with a cell phone. That, anyway, they did formally and legally establish that she was innocent, but she never got an apology. She was asking, for an apology from the state and maybe some compensation. I mean, it was absolutely incredible the way that this woman was just arrested, convicted, and sentenced. And apparently they just, like I say, I don't have the details of the case. Some cases I really follow everything because I love the mental process. In this one, I do not know the details, but if you watch the documentary, you will hear that she did have an alibi. They mentioned that because I remember that. So anyway, another thing that is important here is that any environment, okay, that is connected, it's about places, it's about people. This is where we live, and we need to be integrated into our environment. And if we have any problem, it's going to affect everything. It's very, again, destabilizing. So this woman, she was there, her home was there. She had been living there in that village for many years. And she had helped raise that young girl who was a victim, the first victim. I mean, this was her family. They had separated, but they had spent many years, I think it was 11 years together. I mean, this is substantial, and she had known the children since they were kids. So, I mean, imagine that, a small town, and now everybody thinks maybe you're still culpable. Maybe the body count of the other guy helped things. I'm hoping it did. But the concept of integration is important because, your mind, everything related to your mind and people talking, it affects how you can connect with people and integrate into your environment. But here's another thing. It's the marketplace. And I just want to comment on that because the concept of marketplace is important. You think it's just that we're talking? No, people talking is a marketplace. And if you need proof, just watch TV. The news is a business. Any event is, amplified so that people are stuck to their screen. People, and I include myself, by the way, we're just like this. We just want to know more. Again, we want to know more. We want to be stimulated, and we want to connect. We want to communicate with people. The mind needs to be stimulated. All right. So this is a business. People talking is a marketplace. This is a very interesting concept. And what I want to mention just to finish here, and I probably have a lot more to say, but I'm gonna leave it here. Think about the woman who was interviewed at the entrance of the trial. Think about everybody talking on TV, speculating and saying, she's a lesbian, so blah, blah, blah. Therefore, let me connect the dot. Absolutely, she's guilty. I mean, I think it was a psychologist or criminologist, a woman she said, absolutely, she is guilty. Like, dude, you haven't seen the evidence. You don't know anything about the case. But anyway, I'm going to leave you with the following because this is the most important thing in terms of the mind archetype. And there it is. Your mind is your own public relations. It is your PR in the marketplace. If you think that you're just, talking to people and connecting to people, and it means nothing. Your mind, what you say, what you think, what you say and what you think, it advertises who you are and your worth. Very, very impactful. The mind, I could talk for 3 months and not have completed, everything that I want to say about the mind. It's very, very significant. But if you want to remain with one thing, your mind is your PR in the eyes of others, but also to yourself. So there it is. The mind is really an amazing thing. So I'm just going to say goodbye for now, and I hope to see you very soon.